Folks, I'm here to talk to you in a little deeper dive on an issue that is very important to our nation that's not being discussed by our presidential candidates. They're the candidates that one of them, when elected President of the United States, will succeed Barack Obama, who takes his pen and his cell phone and he takes the rights of American people under the Constitution away from them. To those of you in this room, the ones who care enough about our Constitution to come to CPAC and stand with fellow freedom-loving Americans, the Federalist Papers are an important part of our nation's history. Written by James Madison, a proud Virginian, I might mention, Federalist number 47 makes the case that the concentration of executive, legislative, and judicial power in the same hands is the very definition of tyranny. The idea of too much power being concentrated in one branch of government is the basis for my remarks today and the reason for recent actions I have taken in Congress as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Today, it is clear that President Obama has worked throughout his time in office to increase presidential power and reduce the role of the legislative branch. Whether it is his use of executive orders or his promise to use his pen and phone to go around Congress, his raw power grab has not gone unnoticed by the American people. And we rightfully recognize that it is past time to restore the legislative role of the People's House in our constitutional system. White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough recently said, audacious executive actions are being crafted beyond even those unconstitutional actions the President has already taken to make sure the steps we have taken are ones we can lock down and not be subjected to undoing through Congress or otherwise. The founders would have expected members of the House of Representatives, known as the People's House for its most direct connection to the will of the people, to aggressively guard their role in the constitutional legislative process. That direct connection to the people is why we must fight to restore a proper balance of powers in our system of government. Congress makes laws, and apparently President Obama has forgotten that most basic of principles with his unprecedented actions. That need for a restoration of proper balance of powers is why the House Judiciary Committee recently created a task force on executive overreach to do just that. Halt the ceding of power away from the People's House and Congress generally. Chaired by my good friend, Congressman Steve King from Iowa, the task force will examine the proper balance between the branches of government, educate the American public about the need for a restoration of Article I powers, and explore ways to more aggressively exercise the powers Congress currently possesses to rein in an overreaching executive branch. Keeping legislative power in particular budgeting power close to the will of the people was considered so important that the Constitution specifically provides that the House of Representatives has the exclusive authority to originate revenue bills. But today, as the witnesses at the first task force hearing earlier this week elaborated, Congress exercises far less control over budget matters than was originally intended. Whereas early Congresses specified exactly how much money would be spent for how long, to build a lighthouse or a post road, for example. Many federal programs today authorized by Congresses decades ago are administered by an executive branch and funded on an autopilot basis without the need for any periodic review by Congress. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the constitutional challenge brought by a majority of states against the President's unilaterally imposed immigration plan. The Constitution very clearly grants to Congress, not the President, the power to make our nation's immigration laws. Importantly, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, and rather than limiting the issue the way President Obama requested, it took up the state's suggestion and requested briefings on the following question: whether the President's action violates the Take Care Clause of the Constitution, Article 2, Section 3. That clause of the Constitution requires the President to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. The threat posed by the executive overreach can often seem abstract in the midst of intense policy debates in historically hyper-partisan environment. But this is a very important issue. And I want to thank CPAC for having me here today, and thank you to everyone who traveled here to the National Harbor to reinvigorate the conservative cause and continue the fight for freedom, liberty, and constitutional principles. May God bless each and every one of you, and may God bless the United States of America.